All right, and welcome everybody to the TSG Live Talking Trains show. I'm John, your normal host, and I have a special co-host sitting next to me here. This is Tony Cook.
Hello, everybody. If you're the normal host, is that I'm the abnormal host, like the
Yeah,
Frankenstein brain?
yes, I always try to find strange people to join me on the show.
Well, congratulations! I think you've raised the bar tonight.
I'm sorry, I should say I'm the regular host. I don't know. People
That's
know.
fine.
Yeah,
That's good.
people
Yeah.
know what I mean. I hope the people who watch know anyway.
Well, it's exciting to be on. I've watched the show many a times. So yes,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, thank you for agreeing to join me here this month. I really appreciate that. And for the people who don't know who you are, maybe a little introduction would be in order.
Tony Cook, and I am the editor of Model Railroad News that I produce for White River Productions, and it's 100 pages of new products and product reviews each month. And I think a lot of people are familiar with it. I also do Diesel Era, which White River Productions acquired. It's been a couple years ago, which doesn't seem like it. That as I start looking, it's like, wow, we've been doing that for a couple years now. So Diesel Era is done quarterly, and it's on prototype railroading. And then I'm also the editor on HO Collector that we're moving from a quarterly to an annual beginning next year. So all that good stuff. And then I do modeltrainresource.com, which is kind of my site where I've got a YouTube channel and unbox new products and do just short brief reviews to kind of just show here's what's in the box and here's some of the things that something does. So not a full review like a lot of the other channels do, but just a quick look. And
Hmm.
always done train stuff. Trains
Yeah.
have, yeah, since I was crawling or walking. Yeah.
Sounds a lot like the product spotlights that I tend to put out about
Yeah,
once a week.
I watch those too. I always catch your, is it Friday or when, yeah,
Yes,
I
Fridays.
always see those. I enjoy those. And I do shorter than that. You go even a little more in depth. I basically just show here it is. Here's what you get if you buy it. So yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I like doing those, one of the things I like about it is that they're unscripted, honest reactions.
Hmm.
Like when I open it up, I may see something and think, oh, it doesn't have the SP Light package for example, but I don't go, oh, well, this sucks. It's like
Yeah.
this is what you get, and
Right.
people can see that and decide what they think. So
And that's the same thing as I say, this is the first time I'm seeing it, just as you're seeing it too. So I'm trying to figure out what is this, and they gave me this little bag of what? Oh, I know what these are. Okay, yeah. So, and I
yeah,
think that's part of the fun.
most of the time I don't know what's in the bag, but I show people here it is. Whatever.
I say that to manufacturers all the time when I send them the email of, hey, I'm reviewing this, and I figured out 4 of the 5 items. What are these 2 things? I can't find it on the exploded parts, and where do they go? And it amazes me at times when the manufacturers say, let us check and we'll get back to you.
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if you're going to put them in there, let us know what they are.
That's what
Am I hearing correctly? This is your birthday?
you might have heard something about that.
I did hear that. So I have a birthday gift for everyone watching that
Uh-oh.
you can get 40% off a year of Model Railroad News if you go to shop.whiteriverproductions.com, and TSG10 is the code to put in. And so
Oh,
that is my birthday gift, I guess, actually, to all your viewers. I didn't get you anything, but
okay.
everyone watching your show, that TSG10 at shop.whiteriverproductions.com will give them a discount on a year of Model Railroad News.
I
For,
need to type all that in so I can post it into the comments.
anyway, there you go. And happy birthday.
Thank you. So TSG10 at whiteriverproductions.com.
Go to shop.whiteriverproductions.com, and when you log in and you pick out, the subscription for a year, you'll get 40% off the cover price, approximately, by putting in TSG10, so TSG10
Well, thanks for
in
that.
the coupon code.
That's really wonderful. Thank you. So everybody go to to White River Shop.
Dot
White River Production.
whiteriverproduction.com. Yep.
I see I'm a little slow on the uptake here. Maybe it's because I'm getting old. That's why.
You're 40 something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 49 with experience now. So, yeah.
It's
Got
all in how you spin it. There you go.
yeah, a few years of experience. You know how it is.
Well,
So now, it's interesting. we're not here to talk about all this wonderful stuff. We're here to talk about podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't I bring on our guests? Seems
We
like a good time to do that, right? And we'll have them talk about themselves. What do you think of that?
That sounds good. I know most all these folks, I believe.
All right. Well, let's do that then. I'll do it in alphabetical order. Here we go. So we have 3 guests today, and we're going to talk about model railroad and or train podcasts. So why don't we go around the table here? According to my screen, it looks like Ray Arnott is first. Then we'll go to Thomas, and then Andy. Somehow, Andy, I put you in order, and then it put you last as I'm looking.
Well, he is the second section. So
Right here, let's make him. There we go. Now
There.
he's the second section. I'm going across and then down like the way we.
Oh, okay.
So Ray, it's all yours. Why don't you talk about your podcast, who you are, or what you do?
Well, good evening, everybody. Glad to be here and in a room of great folks. And again, happy birthday, John. That's phenomenal. We landed on your birthday and get to spend it with you. I'm the host of Around the Layout podcast. We're a weekly one-on-one interview podcast where we talk to model railroaders from around the globe and get to hear their stories. It's a lot of the why of their model railroading that we get to learn. And then in addition, the guy that's my neighbor that way, there we go, flip the camera around, Tony Cook and I do a monthly podcast called What's Happening in Model Railroading, where we talk to newsmakers in the hobby, from manufacturers and hobby shop owners and a whole lot more. And then we get to talk about the latest news that is happening in the hobby as well, including new product releases, etc. So that's about the round of it, about around the layout.
Cool. I guess you're next, Andy.
All right. I'm Andy Dorsch from the Second Section podcast. And I'm one of the co-hosts. My co-host Mike Ostertag and I do I'd say every other week, we do a live stream on YouTube where we talk about various topics in the hobby. And we do a little bit of news and stuff like that. But lately, we've been getting a lot of great guests that have been sharing their layouts with us. And we also, one of our more recent shows, we had Bob Frischella do rail fanning of St. Louis. So we cover topics, not only just model railroading, but we also cover the rail fan and railroad aspect. And we have marathon sessions. Our live streams tend to go anywhere between 2 to 3 hours long. And then we also do a little bit of side content too, with shorts and a handful of other one-off videos on the channel. So yeah, every other Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central Time.
Very good. And by the way, I should mention before we go to Tom here, I've put links to all 3 of these folks' podcasts in the description of this video. So if you sound like you're interested in any of them, if you haven't watched them before, I've actually watched or listened to all of them at some point. So just to make it easy. Was that it, Andy? I jumped in there. It sounded like you put a period at the end of your sentence.
I did. And I'm Midwest awkward too. So yeah, you kick it right over to Tom.
Okay. Kicking Tom now.
Yes. Well, hello, everyone. Happy birthday, John. I'm Thomas Gazier from the Twin Cities Division. I am the co-host of the Crossing Gate podcast, and our podcast is a group of modelers that we get together and discuss a certain topic. It started from, let's say, after an operation session or after a show, and we focus on the social aspect of the hobby, and we have up to 6 or so people on and pick a fun topic that hopefully everyone can relate to in the hobby world. And we decided to put it out there. I'm glad they're still volunteering to talk to me. So
yeah, I think yours, Tom, might be the first one that I became aware of, because I had Mike Jordan on my channel 2 or 3 years ago to talk about his produce broker, and I was just really fascinated by it. And he had mentioned that he was on it, and I listened to a few of them because I knew him, and I actually found myself listening to it a few times, which is really unusual for me because I just don't have time to listen to everybody's stuff. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so thanks for everybody. Thanks for joining us here. And we want to talk about, what are podcasts and what value do podcasts bring to the listener or viewer. And again, we can go around and just start our discussion that way. But I also want to throw this out to the audience as well in the form of a question like, why do you listen to or watch podcasts? I'm very curious to hear what our viewers think about that, and that will also probably provide some stuff that we can discuss. So you guys can take it whatever order you want it in.
I think there's a podcaster here who didn't introduce their podcast.
Oh, Tony, you have a
No.
podcast? Oh,
No,
me?
how about you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, we're on my channel, so I assume people are watching my
I
channel.
think you should say it, 'cause I think it's important for the conversation.
Okay. I appreciate that, Ray.
Yeah.
I'm so bad at self-promotion. I need to get better at that. So people who watch will know. People who don't watch aren't watching, so they won't. But I've been doing my podcast, the TSG Multimedia podcast, since 2010, which I don't know for sure, but I think that makes it the longest continuously running monthly podcast out there, train related. I don't know that. I've never heard of another one that's been going longer. So I've been saying that it's the longest one in the galaxy, and people who know me know that's my humor. For example, I'm sitting in the TSG intergalactic headquarters as I speak. So
What made you start? Again, as you say, you were back there before there were many different ones. So what was hey, you know what I think I should do? Like I started my websites in 2000 because I was looking for information on old trains. Like really nobody has a website on AHM or Tyco or Old Atherton Blue Box. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, I'm going to start one, and boom, that's why. So what got you started doing what you're doing?
Well, I've had the YouTube channel, and I've started off in 2005 actually producing DVDs. I don't know if you guys know that. But in 2005, I produced my first ever train-related DVD that was about, or actually VHS tape too, that was about Caltrain, which is my local commute here in the Bay Area in California. And I believe, if I remember right, I mean, we're going back, 13 or 14 years here. I think it had mostly to do with just talking about general stuff like video production, interesting things about filming trains, just, talk about what kind of projects I'm working on and that kind of thing. I've always used my podcast, generally speaking, as a way to share cool things that I've been doing so that the people who follow what I do know what to expect in the coming months. And sometime in the year of 2010, I combined my audio podcast and my video podcast, and they became the same thing. So if you listen to the audio podcast in the car, using Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you get your podcasts from, and then you go watch the video, it's going to sound awfully familiar because it's the same thing. And I kind of like the video podcast because it's kind of like a magazine for people to see a lot of different stuff, because I do a lot of different stuff. I'm not strictly on model railroading. Right. I do a lot of prototype stuff, or I'll go up to Niles Canyon and document the restoration of a 260 that a prototype 260 that they're fixing up and restoring there. And I'll show stuff like, pounding the tires off of the wheel sets with a ring of fire and all that. So it's a lot of just, I guess, railroad and model railroading, and also historic preservation related content. And I don't know, I mean, it's what I find interesting, and I share it so people know what's coming up. That was probably a really long answer for a simple question. Sorry.
They're fun trips though. It is like going rail fanning, or hey, let's go see or do this, that it's fun to watch your videos for that you do feel like, well, I went out to this museum or went to see this person's model railroad, or that's a fun thing. And that, to me, what all the podcasts do is bring that to us. I know as a little kid, my dad was into trains, but I didn't know any other kids. I was from a small town in Illinois, so I didn't know anybody else that was really into model trains or rail fanning like I was, and always wished I had that. So I think of, well, like Andy's son Henry has grown up in this world of, he knows all kinds of people that are into trains, whereas I really didn't as a little kid, and that would have been such a neat thing, especially as a teenager and getting older, of having people that were into trains. So the podcasts and social media, all that has really connected a lot of us together that otherwise would have been. I'm sure there's other people out there, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting too that you mentioned that, Tony, about bringing people together. One of the really cool things I found throughout, the years of doing what I do is it's the people. I mean, I really have always enjoyed meeting interesting people or nice people, and I have made so many friends just going to make videos about what they do. And these are friends and even supporters now on Patreon that I didn't even know them before. And so, yeah, it's interesting. And I do think that at least one of the things that I enjoy doing is bringing people together, where if I know you would benefit from talking to, one of these guys, but you don't know each other, I would send you and that person an email saying, hey, you should meet this person. And they become friends too. It's one of the great things about what we do. So yeah, I see what you're saying.
And that's, I think, Ray's podcast especially, that behind the scenes, or it's somebody talking about their hobby, why they got into the hobby. And at least from my end, because I'm into products and collecting and all that, I always enjoy, like he said, Matt Stern from Bachman and Jim Wiggin from Athearn. It's fun to see these guys that we know they're in the industry, but is it just a job? Is it just something they do? Or are they into trains as well? And so that I always find fun. And Ray, it's great how Ray's podcast is really that behind the scenes of you get, I once you've listened to the whole show, I feel like I know this person, I know why they got interested in this, I know why this is their thing to do with model trains, and it's really awesome. It adds so much more too when I see Facebook posts or they're trying, like, oh yeah, that's that one guy and he does this because he grew up around this railroad. That it's just a really well put together approach that I think Ray has to around the layout.
No, I appreciate that, Tony. It's really my natural inquisitiveness when I start to see and I start to ask that why question, and it kind of bleeds through obviously in the podcast as I get to know folks and the underlying stuff. I go to layouts and, maybe some people, how did you build that? How do you do that? And I ask the why questions, or the ones that maybe, like, I'll give an example. The first time I ever went to Don Iris's layout in Rhode Island, my question wasn't how'd you build this or that. It's like, how did you convince your wife to give you so much room? Right. And, and those are the questions that's interests me. Like, why did you decide to do this? Why did you, what propelled you forward where was the motivation for all this? So that's an inquisitiveness I have. And I think it's a really enjoyable part of it. It really stems back to the Lance Minheim theory of you got to know your why. And I love that. And when he said that, it was like, a man after my own heart. It was really something I could connect with, and therefore the podcast was born, and getting to know people, whether they be manufacturers or even just the person that may have never got on the cover of Model Railroader or RMC or any of the other magazines. They still have a very interesting story to share for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them too.
Oh, and continuing, the list continues to grow. They say 350,000 model railroaders in the United States. I think that number is underestimated, and I think that it's amazing how you just keep finding them, and more people, and some fabulous stories. Ones that you can relate to, and then ones that tell you things you've never heard before. So it's been a lot of fun doing it. That's for sure.
I think we're waiting for someone else down at the bottom row to talk.
Down at the bottom. Yeah, I'll jump in. I think to kind of maybe follow the theme of the why. That like Mike and I started our podcast with the second section was Mike and I have this common passion where we want to, help model railroaders become better, and give them inspiration and essentially, help them along their journey. Because when we were getting started, and it was kind of touching on what Tony was talking about, we didn't really have a lot of resources available in terms of mentorship or, just I guess an outpouring of information that we could essentially harness and then make our model railroading skills better. So one of the one of the big things that we try to do is we like to bring in other people, and Ray and I have always joked about this, is that Ray talks about the why, we talk about the what. And so we bring in, like, for example, we had Mark Herrick on our show last night talking about his beautiful BNSF layout, and having him describe what is his layout, what were the steps that he took to build this beautiful railroad that operates, he's had over 80 operating sessions on it. And we like to give out that information to our audience that they can take the little tips and the little bits and bytes of information and say, oh, okay, so that's how we do that, or that's how we painted this locomotive or weathered that, or that's how we set up this DCC system. And then one of the other aspects that we really like to bring to Inspire is Mike and his ability to tie, being a locomotive engineer for the Canadian National, being able to tie that prototype in and give inspiration to how can we apply that to our models. And he really gives that sense of realism, that authority behind the content that we make. So like that's our whole goal, is our why is to help the modelers that may not have all the resources get information to become better modelers, and of course inspire. We want to perpetuate the hobby because we love it so much.
And the workbench thing, I know you guys do and it seems funny, but no. And like, I contributed to what's on your workbench. And of course, my workbench, as you see behind me, because of the magazine stuff, a lot of times I have nothing on there because I might be I've got a light box, but so all these guys with all their intricate stuff and all this, tools, everything. And then my picture was, I think, just like the Rapido U25s sitting on a white, and it's like, oh, I've missed the point completely of what this is. I don't even have any taco sauce sitting out that. Yeah. So I'm working on it. I'm trying to improve this situation.
Yeah, and I mean, we can if you watch our older episodes, we give tips and pointers on how to improve your workbench situation. So, where you can add taco sauce or some of the other I guess you could say inside jokes that we have on our show. But that's the other thing, that we want to make it fun. We want to have a good community, and we're very fortunate with our audience that they play right into it, and they're just fantastic. It's we do it for them.
And and again, like I say, that workbench thing, it's funny, but as I sat watching the last one you had after Bob's slideshow, there were a handful of things I'm like, oh, I got to remember that. That one where the guy had the sponge, and I've seen that before, where you cut the stuff out to hold, like, your Solvaset or Microsol, and somebody had done something with those, and I can't remember what they did. I'm like, that's that, but look how he did this. That's smart. So again, just looking at somebody's workbench, you come away with, I got to remember that. I got to go home and cut up a piece of styrofoam because that's a real helper. Yeah.
This little bottle seems to be the tippiest little bottle in the world, isn't it? It just somehow seems to find itself horizontal.
It defies the laws of physics. All the center of gravity is in the top, and it just right over.
I think if you looked at it under a microscope, it's actually,
it probably is. We can examine. Let's look at it. Yeah,
maybe it is. They're still laughing at the fact.
The Microsol illusion.
I think there's a new sponsor for my podcast. But and Andy and those guys put up great points. I think, like Ray does the why, and Andy said the what. I think the crossing gate is we bring the experience, right? I think that we try and resonate with other modelers, you know, who value the social aspect of the hobby, who feel like they want to feel included. Everybody wants to feel included, and you want to feel included in a small group. And I think our discussions over, you know, grain elevators or car cards or, you know, DCC, you know, these specific topics make you feel included and make you feel the experience. You know, I think some of our most popular shows are don't build a large home layout. And we bring in people who tell you, you know, what they've done with a large home layout or with a helix or whatever, things like that. So, you know, I agree with that, the why, the what in the experience. And I do want to apologize for the taco sauce. So that goes back to me and William Sampson, if you guys don't know that. So
Yeah,
we giggle every time someone says that, and I've had people talk to me, "Hey, you got tacos?" I'm like, I invented it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
and what is that for the people that don't know that? Because as I watch that, I use now, like on Andy and Mike's show, guys will put the packets or the tell us for the uneducated, what in the world does taco sauce have to do with model railroading?
So William Sampson has the Sue the Milwaukee Road channel. He has two of them. Wonderful. He's a graphic artist, does fabulous editing, and he's always showing you how he does things with a bit of humor. And he always used this panel line wash, Tamiya, panel line wash. And he does voiceovers. You know, he was putting on a boxcar, this and this, and one of the voiceovers says, he uses it on everything. He probably puts it on his tacos, right? So then I made this video doing panel line wash, and you know, and I said, well, I got this from William. You know, he probably puts it on his tacos, and all of a sudden I went up and I made a taco. You know, it didn't have it on it, but I had the bottle, and I ate this taco, and I was, it's not bad. You know, so that, you know, there I am eating this taco, and so between his voiceovers and me eating that taco, it's taken on a life of its own.
The stuff of legend now.
This is really making me wish that I had more time to watch these things. That kind of humor is right up my alley.
The Sue the Milwaukee Road channel is the highly recommended.
It's very good
for me and everybody else. It's so well done. And
I don't think I've seen that one before. You know, it's interesting. I want to go back to something that Andy said, because Andy, you touched on something that I actually tell people quite often, which is about inspiring others. For those of you who know, I do a lot of layout tour videos. Those are like the mainstay of my channel. I think I've actually become known for the layout tours when it comes to these video productions. And I've approached people about doing layout tours, or they've approached me. What the conversation happens, and they will say things like, well, I want to wait until I have more of it done, or, you know, that kind of thing. I'm not really ready yet because I have an area that's not finished. And I tell them all the time, it's like, you know, the unfinished areas are just as interesting to many people, because if they hear what your plans are, they might look at that and be inspired to do the same kind of thing with their own unfinished area. Because everybody who has a layout, well, not everybody, we'll say 90 some odd % of the people who have layouts have unfinished areas. And providing those people with inspiration means a lot to me. And I've actually had people comment and say, I did this because of your video, whatever that is. You know, like another one that might ring with you guys or echo with you guys is the SD40-2 build that I did over the course of 3 years with the guy that I was doing the videos with before, who is a very, very talented plastic model railroader. He super detailed this. I think it was an Athearn Blue Box or a Kato or something that was not really detailed, super detailed it with all these detail part, brass and other detail parts. And I've had a lot of comments from people about that. It's like, that really inspired me to do it. And it's like, that's why we do it. That was a big thing that just, you know, grabbed my attention. I should have, you know, people get inspired by things that you don't expect them to get inspired by quite often. So I think it's important to, like for us as people who share this content with people, to have an open mind about that. I mean, I've heard of people coming in to do a layout video, for example, and say, we need this shot, this shot, this shot, and this shot, and this is what the narration should be talking about. Whereas I'm always like, well, tell me about it. And someone will say something and I'll hear it. And I'm like, oh, that's something that will probably inspire people. We need to have you talk about that. And I'll show pictures, if you have them, of how you built it, just as an example. So I think that inspiration thing is huge, and something that's worth focusing on.
And you never know what I'm always like if I'm putting together a review, whether I'm writing the review for Model Railroad News or it's something that's been submitted, I'll think, oh, this might surprise somebody, or this is an interesting thing. But then when I get emails or letters after, I'm always surprised by this was something that somebody noticed that maybe I missed, or this hit them as more important and I thought this was more. So everybody has a different take on things and different takeaways. But again, you get all that. There's so much I get from the feedback end of it. And same with like HO Collector and collecting old trains. It's always fun to have somebody say, yes, I had this. And have you ever seen this? I never knew. But now after reading your article, I figured out this must be part of this group. And just kind of putting all those puzzle pieces together. It's very gratifying to see that and be part of that, to know that this made somebody's hobby more enjoyable, or they figured something out that, wow, I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing that. And same, reverse, I get the same thing. I learned so much stuff.
Yeah. Another thing that's kind of cool is tips and tricks, right? There are a lot of tips and tricks, and nobody comes into any hobby knowing that stuff. And I've learned some stuff, and I don't even remember where I picked it up from. And I'll share it, and people are like, "Oh my God, that's such a great idea!" Like, yeah, I mean, that's what I thought. That's why I shared it. I stole it from someone else.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I started to coin a phrase on the podcast, which was, they don't put master model railroader on anybody's birth certificate. Everybody starts at the same spot and begins to learn the hobby. And I think that, whatever media you're getting it from, whether it's a video podcast, audio podcast, YouTube channels, magazines, whatnot, it's so important to be able to share all that information out. And that's really kind of the purpose is, whether you're taking it from my angle or Tom's and the Crossing Gates angle, or Andy and Mike and their angle, and even John. And I think it's really neat to see there's 4 podcasts on here that take 4 different angles at this hobby. John, you're like the video journal. Andy and Mike are the how guys. Tom, you guys are like you said, the experience and the debate guys, because you guys will have a lively debate and throw ideas back and forth. So it's really that nice round table that you get a variety of different information from, and then me with the why. So again, it's really great to be able to have multiple different approaches. You don't have to listen to just one approach. You can try to learn your own way through 4 or 5, or now in the golden era that we're in, a multitude of different ways of learning and getting information on the hobby.
Would you guys
go ahead.
Would you guys all agree that scale doesn't? I don't think I get that feedback from Model Railroad News, and I think from the podcast you guys do. I think regardless of scale, and even at sometimes whether you're into prototype rail fanning more than model trains or vice versa, I think there's something to be gained out of all of this kind of information. That's like, well, I'm an in-scale person, so I don't listen to, again, I get that from Model Railroad News, or somebody will say, well, I'm in scale or I do this, but I always read all the reviews because I'm interested in what you say about the prototype. And I feel like the podcasts are that way, that there's podcasts I tune into and the person may be an in-scale person or this, that, or the way. It's like, well, that's not my exact thing, or I'm not into narrow gauge steam as much as, diesel era stuff. But I think that you kind of gain that stuff, or gain that knowledge, or find things out that it's like, well, that was interesting. That wasn't my area of real interest, but now I'd like to pursue a little more and find out more about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think scale, if it hinders you, that's on you. I think I've learned more from the military modelers about painting and weathering than I have from the model roaders. And going back to John, where you talked about passing on ideas, I like Ray's line. The one I always use is, if you steal my idea, you've stolen twice, because I learned it from somebody, from Tony, you learned it from the White River guys. And, I'm just telling you what I learned. And I think that's the cool part about this hobby is I have yet to meet anybody who has secrets that they're not going to share.
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the one thing that we're really fortunate with is that everyone's forthcoming with the information, right? So we've had a couple of guests on the show that like Ralph Franzetti, who he's one of the better you know locomotive and rolling stock weathering people out there, and he's telling our audience not only the fundamentals and the basics but those advanced tips that only Ralph would know, right? And it's we're lucky that we have such a community that we're all willing to share and put that information out there. And like I was just gonna comment before Ray jumped in, is that half of my motivation for doing the podcast is so that I can bring people on the show so I can learn more, so I can steal it twice from Tom, and that's the one of the big motivators for me to keep going, is that I'm always thirsty for more knowledge about this hobby, and everyone else is just willing to essentially share it with me, so I get to win just by having people on the show.
I think that's a great point. It's funny, Andy. This is another one of these things that really resonates with me. I've had people. One. Let me tell you a kind of an anecdote. Hopefully, you guys will get something good from this. So about 8 years ago, something like that, 5 or 8 years ago, some number of years ago, or in that range, I wanted to do a model railroading 101 video. Those introductory things about operations. And I was actually new to it. I hadn't really heard of operations before. I was like, oh, people actually operate trains like the real thing? I didn't know that. So I had made friends with a whole bunch of my local guys here. I'm guessing you guys probably know all of them. And I sent out an email to about 20 or 25 people saying, hey, I want to make this video about operations. And would you be willing to present something that you like about operations on it? Because I don't know. I know I'm not an expert on this, and I want to get some experts in. And one of the guys, I think, misunderstood me and wrote back saying, what you need to do is go start operating. And then in about 5 years, when you know more about it, you should make a video. And I'm like, wait a minute.
yeah,
If I approach every project like that, I'm going to be dead before I get to have the video. So it's so fulfilling to learn from people who know so much more than you do about whatever the topic is. And I've got to tell you, after I've done a how-to or an explainer video about whatever it is, I know so much more because I've gone through and edited. I have to really hear stuff over and over before it sticks. I don't know if it's getting old or I just have bad memory or what. But the longer it goes on, I think my hard drive is full up here, and I just can't remember anything. So having someone explain something and here's how you do it, and I videotape the whole thing, and then I see it again a bunch of times when I edit the thing. I'm like, oh, so I can do this.
Right.
And I've actually done like DCC installs and lighting and weathering and all this fun stuff based on that experience of seeing how it's done and understanding how the, like with weathering, how the material interacts with your canvas and such. And so there's something to be said about bringing those people in and bringing those people on, like we're talking about, because you're going to share stuff with your audience, but you're also going to learn a lot from them as well. And so that's, definitely resonates with me.
I think the message through all of the podcasts is exactly that. The you can do it too. And whether you're a guest on the podcast or a participant or whatnot on any of the podcasts within the model railroading community, there are obviously people willing to come on and share something. And that really highlights the great part of our hobby. You will find more times than not the person that's willing to teach and show somebody and bring them along to raise them up. And that goes across the entire hobby, because the model railroading is a huge umbrella in my mind, right? And it really kind of almost includes rail fanning is kind of on the outside edge of that umbrella, but still within the umbrella. And you find so many great things under that umbrella, and it's still the same attitudes. Of course, there's always going to be a few, but the vast majority of the people that I run into, and certainly the people I put energy into and want to deal with, are the ones that say, I did this, let me show you how I did it. And like you said, they probably learned it, and likely learned it from somebody else. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They just figured out, learned it from somebody, but they want to lift you. And the same thing happens. The thing is the same thing for everybody in this room. I want to see, as a podcaster, Andy do well and Tom do well, and the second section and Crossing Gate, and even the other ones that we're not mentioning. It's just, it's all a lift. It's, Andy has learned not to take audio advice from me anymore, because once he does that, he kicks himself off his podcast. But and Tom and I have had conversations on mics and audio, and we've shared, and it's not just, it's the spirit of model railroading. It really is, and I think that it trickles through all of the different compartments that exist under model railroading.
Yeah. When we lift when we lift each other up, not only do we all win, but the hobby wins, right? And that trickle, that enthusiasm that we, share for the hobby, or share for each other's, activities in the hobby, that's infectious, right? And people see that, and that spreads the sphere of model railroading, right? So the vendors get an impact, the clubs get an impact. This is a positive hobby. This is a positive activity that you can share with your friends, and it just everybody wins when we just lift each other up like that and share, right?
And I like John talked about the unfinished layouts, and I think one of the truths that no one talks about, but I try and preach this and beat into people's heads, is that everybody wants to see at least a section of your layout unfinished. And even at like the RPM meets that we, like the modelers retreat we have up here in the Twin Cities, is excellent. And people say, my stuff's not done. I said, bring that. We want to see that. If Tony brought something, if he brought, well, here's the design, it's not painted yet, we would love to see it. I want to see how you made that gondola, how you did this. That, I appreciate that beautifully painted New Haven baggage car, but if you had it there scratch built in all its styrene glory, I'd be all over that thing with it. And I think that's where, like John, but people, my layout's not pretty enough, it can't be on the cover. And it's like, that's not the point. People want to see, your nice track work. They want to see it before ballast and things like that. And I think sharing that is important. And I like that, John, you still push through with that. And I like that everybody else kind of does it in the hobby as well.
Tom, you're absolutely, and I hit dead on what you said in a recent podcast, and I'm sorry I can't remember who I was saying it to, but we were talking about unfinished layouts, and I used the term autopsy. It's like an autopsy before your eyes, right? It's cut open so that you can see it. Like if you can see somebody who is doing mountain work and all they've got is the lattice laid out, you get to see it. There's the autopsy. There's the rib cage, and the skin's peeled back, and you can look inside, and there's so much more. In fact, again, you can almost, like you said, learn more from that unfinished than you can. Finished at times seems to be overwhelming for people, right? You walk into a complete 100% finished layout, and it's taken back. But if you get to go over to see, wait a minute. That's the trick. That's how they make. That's how they pull the rabbit out of the hat. That's it right there. Oh, I can do that. I can put lattice together and lay plaster cloth, and I can do this and that. That's exactly it, and that's the inspiration that keeps people going, keeps them from hitting that overwhelm. I can't do it. Analysis paralysis, and fixes all that and brings them down to listen. What I love about my podcast, the why, it really gets to know the person, and then you go, yeah, I sound like that guy. That sounds a very familiar story. And if he's able to do it, why the heck can't I do it? And hopefully it's relatability to my audience and says, yes, this sounds like a story I can relate to. And yes, I can build a layout of my dreams as well.
Yeah.
I've often said that when I do my own how-to videos, because look, full disclosure, I'm new to doing weathering, for example. I'm new to doing, well, I guess I'm not really new to doing DCC installs anymore or lighting, but I would always finish my how-tos with the finished thing and say, look, I've never done this before, and if I can do it, you can too. I think there's power in that.
I agree. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing
Or
too on that, seeing it half done or unfinished, I think that a lot, especially with today's, almost everything is ready to run, fully assembled. And a lot of times when I can get my hands on them, I like to have pictures of undecorated or early samples. Like I've got a review coming up on those new Rapido U25Bs, and I asked Matt Gentry, who worked on those for Rapido, I said, let me have those pictures where you took those, the gray shells with the etched brass, and you could see the different detail pieces were black on a gray shell. I said, I want one of those pictures when you took that out to that club to test them. I want to put it in the review, because again, when you see it all finished, like you don't realize, oh, the footboards are etched brass pieces that are separate from the plastic front pilot, that some of those details and other things, I think that as a model railroader, we have that curiosity, whether it's a scratch built piece or a finished Rapido or Genesis or Broadway Limited piece of, well, I know some of it's metal, and I think that might be a separate piece, but is it? So it's fun to see some of that. You want to know that, how did that get made, as much as you appreciate it done.
You get a level of a heightened level of appreciation for that, right? You know that
Yeah.
this. You know, we've often used the analogy of, you know, model railroading as some form of art. You know, right? You know, and there's a lot of work that goes into the art, like Ray was talking about with, you know, the autopsy, you know, and seeing that, oh, well, it's just bench work now, but there was a lot of work that went into that bench work. And I know from, you know, with the podcast that we have here in the room, you know, a lot of the topics that are talked about, they go through and explain that, and give you that appreciation. I think that's one of the other bits of value that, you know, I draw from listening to Ray's show and Tom's show and watching your stuff, John, is that, you know, there's that, we get to see or hear those struggles, and we get to have that appreciation, you know, as well, to say they're going through what I'm going through, and now I feel like I'm part of this community, and then I can see that, oh my goodness, you know, they're doing it the same way that I do it, you know, this is really going to work out, or, you know, man, I just love how that layout's built, and all of the depth that went into the construction of it, and the detail, you know, that it really gives you that appreciation, like this person really worked hard on it, and then, you know, you get to enjoy that with them. And I think that's one of the other things that I like to talk about is, you know, we get to be part of this community and share in that, and that's what I like.
Something I've enjoyed in doing, you know, sharing my projects is sometimes I screw up, and I will show people, like, look, I shouldn't have done it that way. I'm going to fix it now, and this is how I fix it. You know. So yeah, there's value both directions. You know, whether you're showing someone how to do it or how not to do it,
Right.
equally valuable, right?
And it really is. Yeah, just this week that I was mentioned before we went on tonight, that Rapido RSC14 diesel, I was doing an unboxing video, and I had read the instruction thing. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't leaving any screws in, that it would all work, and it had chains from the trucks to the frame. And yep, yank, and broke it. And I left it in the video because, again, it's like, well, they don't mention it in the instructions. And this is, I thought it was going to come out from under the truck a certain way. So as I'm pulling, I'm like, oh, I just broke the other side. And it was a fixable, easy thing. But it's like, now leave that in, because if I just spent $300 on that locomotive, I sure would like to know to be leery of this or be aware of this, that, you know, so yeah, that can be, you know, it's not, you're not thrilled to say, look at this, I just broke this off, but it's, you know, I put that in print reviews where I'll state that, you know, while handling this, that I broke this off, so be careful of that. It's very delicate. That, again, it's a help, because, like, boy, I would have liked to have known that if I bought it and got it out of the box. I wish somebody would have told me. Yeah.
Reminds me of rehanging brake chains on Dash 8 Atlas locomotives, and it's like pushing. It's exactly like pushing a rope or pushing a chain. That's exactly what you have to do to get it to rehook. You're pushing a chain. It's quite a challenge, and then you find out some expert model railroaders that you talk to about it say, I took that thing and threw it across the room. So
that's why I listen to Tom's show.
Yeah,
and that's the experience that they share.
the experience of. And I think Ray and Andy hit the one word that if it wasn't for this, I don't think our podcasts or video casts would go anywhere. And that's the relatability, right? Showing the in progress, showing the mistakes. Two of my favorite authors video, you talk about like Mike Rose from Model Road Hobbyist and numerous other magazines, and Luke Towan, the famous YouTube senior builder. They've both, Mike has done articles where he's shown his mess ups, but he also shows how he got out of it. You know, he made this beautiful grain elevator, and he had to glue that wonderful, I'll pronounce it wrong, soydam siding on there, aluminum siding.
Oh.
And of course he used like, tacky glue. The next day it's all at the bottom of the silo. And he's asking, Scotty Mason about, Scotty Mason, of course, knew how to do it. And then he told all of us, so we didn't make the same mistake. And Luke Towan saved me. He was doing a river module, and I'm over here scared to death to make water. And I'm like, I'm going to watch this. And he pours this 2-part epoxy, but then he showed the next day, it just melted his foam base. And he says, do this and this and this. I'm like, 10 more coats of, the Mod Podge before I'm pouring water. And I think it's relatable when somebody at that level shows you, here's my pile of junk. Yeah. It's like, okay, we're not, 7 steps of separation from, some of these people that are in magazines or articles or videos all the time. Like John said, it's relatable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that Luke Towan example is the absolute reason why you watch the entire video before you start. Don't just get 5 minutes in and go, that's how you do it. Make sure you watch the entire thing, because you'll learn.
You push pause and make the same mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Then you hit play. Oh, look at that. I'm like, like him.
Yeah.
That's relatability. I'm just
at least you know what to expect when it's.
Yeah.
I've done that with like cooking videos where I start watching. I'm like, I think I could do that with whatever. And then I just go into the kitchen and it's like, oh man, that didn't come out right at all. And you come back, hit play, and they're like, now be careful, because if it's too hot at this point, it's like, 2 more minutes and I would have not ruined my dinner. But well.
Here's a pro tip. That's why they have the little thing at the bottom that's watch at 1.5 or 1.75 or 2 speed. That something else that someone mentioned about, getting some, I think it was you, Tony, mentioned about getting something and you pull it out and you break it or whatever. I do the same thing with my product spotlights, but it's usually not me breaking something. It's usually a loose piece in the box. And I'll show it. It's like, look, this came off, I think, during shipping. But in order to stay positive, which I think is lacking in some places, I'm like, this is how you fix it. Just take some CA or canopy glue or whatever and just be careful and you put it back on. Like, we're grown-ups. We can do this. Like, you're getting some piece of rolling stock with 250 separately applied parts. Chances are something's going to be off. Be a grown up, be a modeler, and fix it. Like, I don't like this because it came broken. Well, it came all the way from China, for goodness sakes.
In a much better box than the 2 garbage bag twist ties, right, Tony? So it's just better.
Yeah. See, you have to look at it from that angle. When could you, throw a plastic SD45 shell on that metal frame and do 2 garbage bag twist ties, put it loose, not sealed or anything, in that old blue box and send it on its way? There wasn't much there to get broken. And even in those days, stuff would be dinged up or broken when you'd see it in hobby shops. So, when you think of today's models, it's stunning. They make it as well as they do, all things considered. Yeah, it's incredible.
I think also all of our podcasts inspire searches. Ray talks to a lot of these people that are just amazing, but they're geographically amazing. I've never heard of some of the Northeast guy. And I'm like, and so I'll search him out and I'm like, here's his layout page. Here's his blog. Here's what he does. And I've ended up writing letters to people. And Andy brings people on and I get my moment of shame tonight. I get to admit, Andy, they're all bragging about this guy called Boomer. He's on the show. I'm like, I have no idea who this is. And I was just getting troll letters. I'm like, well, how do you not know? I'm like, well, he wasn't in my wheelhouse, And I'm like, now I know this guy. Now I know this. It was the one with the St. Louis rail fanning. And then, John, of course, with all his videos, I'm like, Niles Canyon, this museum. And I Googled that and I'm like, they are restored in 060. They do have the only, narrow gauge baggage car. Well, they are, and it's kind of interesting that you learn more and more information,
Yeah.
And I think that's what resonates with all this is that it just, you go beyond you don't just shut it off. You're kind of like, well, who is he talking to? Who is Tony talking to?
Right.
It kind of goes together with the way that our podcasts all kind of play together, and especially second section, us with being more interview and guest related. And I'll give an example. We had within the same week Marty McGurk, and Mike and Andy interviewed him just after I had talked to him, and it was perfect. It was like it really worked well together, because if anybody listened to my podcast and then went to second section and listened to that, you heard two totally different things. I talked to Marty about being on the dock in New London and seeing submarines and CV and, and then, how that inspired his life and how it moved him forward. Mike and Andy were like, hey, how'd you build that building? Or why'd you put it? It really tied together. It was like a continuation. It went from, okay, we got to know Marty McGurk and who he is and his path forward. And then Mike and Andy took over from there and then found out how he created his Central Vermont layout. It really ties. And I think that's what's really enjoyable, that you can have similar or the same guests. Mark Herrick, again, Andy and Mike talked to Mark Herrick last night. Mark's a local friend, and I had him on the podcast. But other than some overall summary things being repeated, Mark and I didn't have time in an hour to walk around his layout. But Andy and Mike, with the video aspect, that's a perfect avenue for Mark to be able to put a slideshow together and have pictures of his layout as you walk around it. It just works well. So it's so neat that you can continue that. And then you get to really know these people from all walks and all around the world. And I'm babbling on here, but I do want to share one thing that you were saying about Northeast. If anybody, I started the podcast with 3 people. And if you ever start a podcast, here's the easy layup, right? Interview your best friend. That's the easiest one, right? That way you get comfortable and you get to figure it out. So I got to interview Joe Mammy. Then I brought on Corey, who's another friend, and then Mike King. But then everybody's like, somebody put up on there, yeah, I like listening to Around the Layout. It's a great Northeastern U.S. related. I was like, I'm not trying to, So episode 4 was Sydney, Australia, and Paul Kassar. I had to go all the way around the other side of the world just to prove that I'm not a New England-based podcast.
Showed that guy, didn't you?
That's right. Went around the place. Episode 5, I probably interviewed somebody from downtown. So,
well, he did interview Dan Dosa, so he had to come to the Midwest for a little.
They'll never say that again, right?
Yeah.
I will say though, I really appreciate your approach, Ray. I can tell, listening to your interviews, that you make your guests absolutely comfortable. They will tell you anything you ask them, and you're really good at that. That's something I've really appreciated about hearing what you do. So
I appreciate that. I take the word guest to heart. They are my guest. They're my, just as much as if you guys all showed up at the house. How would I treat you when you come in the house? The same way. You're in my house. And really in a lot of ways, because of the whole virtual thing, they've invited me into theirs. And I would never want to embarrass a guest. I never set them up for failure. I always want to make them feel the most comfortable possible and hear their story and spin it in a light of positivity. 100%. It's more fun that way.
That's how it needs to be done. I mean, I've been on the other end of conversations like the opposite of what you're talking about, and that's like, why do it? Why even do it? Right? So,
guest in my home, and I know that the other gentlemen that are in this room do the same thing. Exactly that. You treat them like a guest in your room. Now Tom a little different, because he knows those guys pretty well, and he can. Yes. But that is, let me tell you, if I got the floor here, the Crossing Gate and their level of humor, and the sponsors just absolutely crack me up, and I just can't wait to hear every time they do a podcast what they're going to come up with. Of course, one of them was something I brought up, and it was funny to hear them spin it with the stickers. But they take such a great approach, and I think we all try to mix in humor, but you guys got it nailed. You really have that camaraderie around the table. No matter who you bring, it shines through your podcast. That you guys are close, you're friends, you would likely be hanging out in each other's homes and layouts, and you can almost imagine what that conversation is when you have operating sessions is probably a lot like what we get to hear on the podcast, which is a lot of fun.
It's not
Very
far off.
candid.
Our emails are worse, but it's not far off. So.
Probably censored too. We probably have to black out a lot of the lines.
Redacted.
Yeah, and here I'll say a quick thing about the sponsors was okay. So ours is run by the Twin Cities division of the NMRA. So and it costs nearly nothing outside of like my time to edit. So I didn't want to go, with the Patreon route or something. I like those routes, but we didn't want to be under the pressure to put out a product X number of days in this and this, which all of you do extremely well. We know in your podcast, we know when your video casts are coming, we know this. And that's why, people are willing to like honor that and like do this and that. So that's why we don't do that. But I said, hey, we got to do some sponsors and make fun of the tropes in the hobby. And now my wife is tugging on my shirt. You got another podcast? You got another thing? So.
Did she come up with those herself, or how do you?
No, I write them myself,
Okay.
or Dan Dosa will write them with some ideas from Will Sampson and stuff. But she just loves them. She just
That's the kind of thing, Tom, that I would love to do, but I just don't have the creativity to come up with stuff like that. But it's interesting, Ray. You mentioned about how Tom's podcast is very natural, and these guys are ribbing each other and poking fun, and it doesn't sound like they're being mean to each other because they're not.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it is whenever we get together for our op sessions or whatever social things we're doing. And let's just be honest, an op session is an excuse to hang out, right? I mean, the trains are cool, but that's really what we're doing. I go for the donuts and I stay for the trains and the people, right?
Isn't there an ad about that too? About layout
there might
snacks?
be. There might be snacks.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So, but we have a lot of fun doing that. And frankly, if you didn't know that the people in the room were fun, you'd think they were going to start fighting because of the kind of humor that happens. But that, to me, it makes it a lot of fun. And I mean, you got to kind of have a thick skin sometimes because people will say stuff that it's like, it's a little bit too far, but it was funny, So you're kind of like, whatever, I'll get you next time,
Right. Oh yeah.
Well, there's always topics to touch and topics not to touch. There's always a half truth in comedy, and you always want to make sure you're tiptoeing lightly on that half truth. And they do a great job of it. They don't beat each other up too bad. They just have a little bit of fun, and that's certainly that kind of thing. And Andy and Mike, same thing. There's some good humor in theirs, and Mike Ostertag is basically a comic. He's probably like a living cartoon, some people's eyes, But and let me say about those guys, the second section guys, the short line of the show. I've told Andy this multiple times. It's ingenious. I wish I could steal it. It's ingenious, and that really ties into that how, and it goes to a point where when they start talking about this and they start showing aerial photos of some of these short lines, it's basically telling you, here's an idea. Mm-hmm. Look at this. How do you do it? You could just model this area and do so well. It's a phenomenal idea, and it works very well in their format.
And I can't take any credit for that. So yeah, Mike had a great idea. We were talking about how we could inspire, people to, get into modeling and maybe not necessarily do BNSF or, UP or the big railroads. But what we did was Mike had this idea. He's like, let's go around all 50 states and we'll pick a short line that's not affiliated with any, big parent company, and we'll talk about it. And then we'll show you that, hey, there's model railroad equipment available for this. You can do this on a 4x8 sheet. You can do this on a shelf layout. Doesn't have to be a Chicago to LA type, pike. You can do this, in your bedroom and give inspiration. And now Mike's evolved it so that you give a history of the railroad. You get all of this backstory on it. And then he started to bring in, and it's like, here's a potential track plan that you could use. And people have just been so supportive of that topic, and it's that was one of the things about our show, is that we bust things up into different segments. So we have, the what's on your workbench, where our community comes in, and yeah, sure, there's the comical bits of, here's, just a pile of junk or a pile of, paint cans or whatever on my workbench. But there's also people that are sharing their work. And then Mike had like I said, the idea of, well, let's do a short line, or like a rail fan, or a real, prototype bit. And then we just recently added a locomotive of the show. It was like the short line of the show, where we talk about a locomotive, and we started out with this GE mate, and it turned out that it's a slug unit, and he went into the whole history of it and how you can model it and what was it used for, and the different applications, and people just absolutely love the information. So we're that's kind of how we do it. But yeah, that was Mike's brainchild, to get people inspired.
That's a really cool idea. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah. I think, Andy, your show has evolved from, the beginnings. I'm jealous of two things. And one is you just do it live. Ray and I have talked about this. You guys fly without a net, which is scary, but you don't have to edit for hours like Ray and I sit there.
Yeah.
So we are jealous of that. And I like that you've evolved from like, hey, we're going to get people involved. Facebook, show us what's on your workbench, to we don't care what's on your workbench. We just want to see the mess around your workbench and give you a prize and doing things. I just love that the evolution of including everybody is now a challenge and thing. But I do have one question, since I gave up where taco sauce comes from. Where does greasy meat hands come from? So I missed that episode.
So the greasy meat hands was, we were talking about operations, and it had to do with the snacks at an operating session, right? And we were talking about, like, we have this beautiful tangent rolling stock, and there's someone doing a switch move, and they've been they've had 3 pulled pork sandwiches, and they just and they didn't wash their hands after the lunch at the operating session. They just take their their greasy meat hand, and then they move the car around, and they leave fingerprints and stuff on it, and then they got a coupler lift bar that they end up ingesting, and that type of stuff.
So then, especially good on the black ones.
Yeah, right. And it's just, and then it just someone in the chat, because we do this live stream, right? And there's always characters in the live stream chat, like Split Rock. He's one that is always trolling us.
Yeah, I heard of that guy in my streams too.
That guy over there, and Ray, he'll come in and troll. But it turned into this, like, I guess, this little inside joke for our community about greasy meat hands. And then I think it was Paul Scott, one of our other viewers, and he says, "Oh, it's the Greasy Meat Hands band."
Yeah.
And so then that's where the Greasy Meat Hands came from. And then Will Sampson kind of got in the fun, and he made this like this short little loop about greasy meat hands, and picked on me about it, and then we just ran with it.
Yeah.
Just having fun, right? That's what it's all about.
It's good when it happens organically like that. I know John's done that a lot. And Ray, I think then you're being successful and you're striking a chord, and it's relatable when things evolve, and the members of your people who are listening or watching can chime in.
Andy and I quite often find ourselves, we'll have a conversation, we'll throw ideas back and forth. And one of the things, as we were chatting, I asked Andy, and I said, "What do you think the number one thing going for your podcast is?" And Andy had a couple good answers, but I answered one that I believe the biggest thing the second section has going for it is the interactivity that's available by doing it live. And same thing with you, John, with this show here, with folks chiming in and being able to put comments in and have that interactivity within the people is something that's a very strong piece of the second section podcast. And it's enjoyable. Now, some of us can't quite hang in there the 3 hours anymore, but especially here on the East Coast, you guys start on Central Time, and I'm already an hour in the hole by the time you start. But it's it's still a lot of fun. You look forward to those. You see a guest and, chiming in and being able to share or ask a question and have it answered and see your name come up on the screen is just a really cool aspect. And they've done an excellent job. Hats off to them for doing it live. I'm not a very good live person. I only do once a month. I do a live. I give the giveaway for the operating crew, and I stumble through that half hour. These guys knock out 3 hours and have become really good at it. So again, hats off to you guys for getting it done.
I got to tell you, having the live interaction with the chat on the side is so fun. Oh, speaking of live interaction with the chat, someone was asking earlier for us to go around for us to go around, the three of you guys to go around and tell us about if you were inspired by someone to start doing your podcast, and if you were, who was it? And, how did that inspire you, and what have you done to manifest that? I have added a whole bunch to the question. He just wanted to know who inspired you, but
you're the host. You can do that.
That's right. I have the button, as they say.
Right. That's right. That's right. I'll start. My inspiration really. I'll just go back real quick. I'm a 1998 graduate of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I have radio training in my background, but I really didn't do a whole lot with it until kind of pandemic, and I got involved with my buddy Dave Gardner, who runs a podcast called Digital to Dice. He actually does a podcast with his friend Ron, and they do sports simulation games, cards, dice, sports simulation games, kind of old school, but really popular during the pandemic. And then I would go on, and he'd just do these like Saturday night chats, and I used to enjoy going on with him. And I always wanted to do something with a radio thing, and then I heard other model railroad podcasts, and I felt that there was a different angle to take, and that's really what inspired me when I talked to Dave and listened to him interview people and talk to him. Said, we can really do the same thing in model railroad as well, and have that why aspect to it, and that's what inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll jump right in. So, John, you were one of the first ones that, I was exposed to, very early on. And I, from the model railroad aspect, and there were others as well. But I think the thing that really, inspired us, or who inspired us, I can say there's a group of tabletop gamers that do a podcast called Trapped Under Plastic. And they're they're a little outspoken, but it's two friends, right? And they come together and just they just talk about their hobby that they're in and share their enthusiasm for it. And then they would tell you the how of it and give you tips and techniques and stuff along the way. And it was for us, or for me, it was inspiring. And Mike and I have been friends for a long time. We've done where we've gone to operating sessions together. We've done clinics together and in the NMRA and that type of stuff. And we just figured, hey, let's just take this act on the road. And because we really wanted, like when we were part of the Winnebago Land Division in the NMRA, I was the superintendent, he was the assistant super, and the whole goal was let's inspire people, let's get people really really enthusiastic about model railroading. And finally, we were watching things like with John, there's a great way to reach people here, and it's using video. And so that's where the genesis came from for us, and the inspiration.
Yeah, I think the early ones for me were the late Ryan Anderson's Model Railcast show, which is, I wish they were easier to get to. Those were just so organic and fun. And then Tom Barbalet, and he helped me so much with editing things in his show. And he said on one of his shows that he found it odd that there were so few model railroading podcasts, because he's a member of the wargaming community. Mm-hmm. And he says there's got to be 50 podcasts on wargaming, and I'm sure there's 50 just on Warhammer 40K. And And so I started thinking about this, and I'm like, so I kind of roughly learned the trade working with Gordy Robinson and a few other people. We tried to get an NMRA podcast off the ground, which was a total failure. But then we've learned more and more, and I talked to the guys locally. I said, well, let's start small. Let's just have a Twin Cities division, and let's not do the one person in depth. I said, let's have a roundtable discussion like our socialists, like we love, so we can joke on each other, and talk about car cards and waybills and operations and narrow gauge and make fun of Joe Binish every day. So it's Mike Jordan and stuff. So I think that was it. That was like Tom Barbalet. And then going into the video, of course, with John and Heath Hurwitz has been amazingly kind to me, getting me hooked up to this. So that would be my
Mike Rose.
I'll second Heath Hurwitz. I mean, huge help to me as far as the technical end on video and lighting, and again, it's just amazing the support you get, even outside the podcast stuff, and any of the YouTube stuff. There's been a lot of support. Sorry, I cut you off, Andy.
Oh, I was just gonna say Mike Rose and Scotty Mason too. Those, listening to those two guys was really, fun. It was just like, I want to have that level of enthusiasm that they have, and that's where I drew a lot of my inspiration from as well.
I took a real risk asking that question because I was waiting, especially you, Tom. I was waiting for you to say, well, I saw how John did it and it sucked so bad that I wanted to do something better.
Anybody can do better than this.
Right?
We would never say that. Never say that to your face.
Yeah, out loud.
We may text each other that, but we would never say that out. No, John, you're doing great. And you mentioned Tom Barbalet. I listened to Tom Barbalet, and he mentioned at the one end of his podcast, he brought me up, and I was so taken back. It was just like, it was so cool to hear a guy. And to me, like, those guys are kind of like the founding fathers of the model railroad podcasting. And and that's exactly what he said. Hey, I'm not putting out as many podcasts as I used to, but if you're looking for a podcast to listen to, and he mentioned me, I was like, wow. I mean, but that's that spirit, that's that idea. And we want to bring people into the podcasting space. And whether you're listening to Andy, you're listening to Tom, you're going back, you listen to Tom Barbalet or Scotty Mason, or whoever you're listening to, eventually I feel that if you're listening to one, you will eventually find another one. You're in the right room, and you're in that area. And that's how I found podcasts. I would go on and I started listening to some, and then I go, oh, well, that was an hour and I still got 3 hours to drive. What else am I going to listen to? And scroll through and find the next one and the next one. And you don't have to listen to just one, or you don't have to, it isn't like choosing like, I'm a hockey guy. It's not like just choosing a specific team. If you like the sport, you've done well, right? And I think if you're a hockey fan, hey, you're in the family. Unless okay, you're a Flyers fan or this or that, but you're still in the family, right? And I think that's the exact same idea.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is that you may not like the second section, but since you're looking around for other ones, you might find TSG, and you like that, or you stumble across the crossing gate or around the layout, and get hooked up with them. And I think that's the other key too, is you try one, maybe it's not your thing, but you go to the other one that like I'm one of those odd ducks. I like all the shows because I'm just a nut like that. But for me it's some of them are good, some are not good, and then there's everything in between. But yeah, you're gonna find something that you like, especially in this topic.
Yeah.
So,
and I think if you do go back, there's like Trevor Marshall had a wonderful show. His was the first show that I heard that was professionally edited. But he came out and he said, well, I'm going to do 50 shows and be done. And I'm like, wow, don't stop now. Because I used to listen to him when we'd be traveling on the train. Like, they'd put us in a cab and make us go from A to B to go get on a train. It was wonderful listening to. And so go find those, if you can, find the old model rail casts. And Tom Barbalet goes back like John, years and years and years. That it's just interesting guests, interesting topics.
Tom's always one of those really good hosts. A lot like you, Ray. He always would make me feel welcome. I would call in and I always felt like he cared about what I had to say, and he asked great follow-up questions, so you knew he was listening to you. Right. So I have to.
I wonder what John's water bill is. I mean, my show's an hour. You guys can do it in half hour, 45 minutes. So I'm just wondering do you run out of hot water at some point? I mean, are you listening to us in a cold shower or?
Yeah, I saw that there.
I'm looking at this question and thinking there must be something going on here. I don't know.
There's something definitely inside, very private, very inside that we don't know about.
I mean, Andy, you have kind of a guilty look on your face. Do you know what they're talking?
No, I don't. If I did, I'd share it.
Andy, you're not listening in the shower, are you?
Hey, I
just no is the right answer. I'll give you this one. No,
I do my broadcasts from the shower, so I don't know what's
nice. Nice. You keep your mic on. You keep your mic dry.
Oh goodness! And this is it. This is where it goes.
Yeah.
Now we're off the rails, down the ditch and on fire. Yeah.
Well, I'll bring it back around. Around. By the way, we've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes. My expectation was to go for, hour and a half, hour and 45. If you guys are enjoying yourselves, we can go as long as you want. But we do have to end at some point because I'll have to go to the bathroom at some point.
Oh, you can go.
Just
go, right? You can listen in the bathroom too.
Yeah. Can right here, Yeah. But
we'll get you banned. No worry.
I was going to bring it back around and say that you guys mentioned one of my favorite guys in the community, which is Heath. He's been nothing but a great help and, helpful and always there. If you have a question or, need something or want to bounce something off of him. I consider myself the president of the Humanity Junction fan club. So I hope you guys didn't want to be president because I already am.
Well, you guys have that kind of camaraderie within, I call it you guys. I guess it's us too. I mean, maybe whatever. I don't know. I don't call myself a YouTuber. I'm a podcaster, but you guys had that, what is that, the gathering that you had in Colorado. Yeah. Where you had a bunch of, that's phenomenal. I mean, to be able to, it's kind of that special interest group kind of mentality where if you guys are able to, I'll be honest, I kind of I closed my eyes and imagined all of you guys with cameras aimed at each other, like 20 of you just like trying to do a live stream all at the same time, and there was no bandwidth. But, it's phenomenal. And it's great to be able to share and have that shoulder to lean on, just like we've talked about before. Just like the rest of the hobby, whether you're doing a podcast, YouTube channel on it, or if you're painting, weathering, bench work, track laying, whatever the aspect is, it's great to have people to lean on. And Heath is definitely one of those guys.
Yep. Great guy. Here's the other guy. I highlighted the comment from him. My other hero of building community on YouTube is Dave Sparky. I don't even know if I would have been doing live stuff if it hadn't been for Dave. He got me interested and encouraged me to do it, and I've had so much fun. One of the early live streams we did, this is really funny to me. He says, hey, I found this thing called StreamYard. I want to have, you want to go on and just check it out. Let's see what it does, And I went to the website and did whatever signing up you have to do, and I started a live stream, and we're thinking, we'll be on for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just to see what this thing is. 4 hours and 8 minutes later, we're having to go because it's like 1 a.m. where he lives. And it was like, someone just disappeared. Who was that? Oh, Tom just disappeared. What happened?
Tom, I think it froze. So he'll pop back in.
Tom was freezing for a couple times there. I was afraid.
I'll watch for him to come back. I'm sure he'll reappear in our basement here. So, but anyway, I've had a lot of fun. Whoop. That's the wrong way to do that. I've had a lot of fun with all of these people, and they're just great people. So I was
got a great community, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
And even Heath leading into some of the second section shows, he'll toss it over and sends the audience that way. It's in a spirit of cooperation for sure, and that's exactly the point we all like to make, is we all work together to just bring people in. My show now, but might not be for everyone. But hey, go check out Second Section. Those guys are good too. And if I don't work out for you, then maybe, or they don't work out for you, go check out Crossing Gate, and or go back and listen to some older episodes of some of the older shows that are out there that are still available, or Tom Barbalet, and on and on
Mike
and on. There's just a
Rose
lot
and
of
all
Mike
those
Rose, and
It goes to one of the things that you and I have talked about briefly offline, Ray, which was I was in sales for a long time. And one of the things about being in sales is you have to know your competition, if you want to call it that, and you have to know what you have. And as an honest person, if I didn't have whatever someone who walked in needed, I knew who did, and I would send them over there. It's like, go over there. Here's what to expect. This is what to ask for. Yeah. And I would help them.
That's how you take good care of people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think we can do the same thing. And that was having this whole shindig in the first place, is to, we can build a bigger tent. I don't think that if someone's under your part of the tent, that they're not under my part of the tent too. Probably a stupid analogy, but you know what I'm saying? There's no reason to be, territorial about it or anything like that. Cause I'm okay. Tony, if you want to listen to Ray and watch my show too, great. And I'll even tell people to watch your guys' shows or refer them to your site or whatever, because aren't we here to help each other? I mean, I am.
I do subscribe to the theory that comparison is the thief of joy. And the moment that you start weighing these podcasts, or you start weighing your YouTube channel against the next person, I'm a drag racing guy. If anybody's familiar with drag racing, 2 cars going down one, each other, run your lane, run your race. And that's what I do. I run my race, and thankfully I've got a good crew behind me, including guys that also run in the other lane that are willing to help. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I just want to do my podcast because of all the things that I mentioned before. I just enjoy it. I absolutely love to talk to people, and nothing more. I just want to be able to communicate and have this fun thing and play around with all this fun gear, and that's what I want to be doing. And I'm sure that for you guys, it's the same thing. It's just a ton of fun within this hobby.
Well, I'm having so much fun with this show that I'd like to do it again sometime. I mean, I really enjoy talking to you guys.
Yeah, Maybe Tom will stay for the entire time too. That'd be really good.
Yeah, the devil. Look who just showed back.
He's out recording commercials. Hey. Your next commercial should be for good internet. Yeah. Can you do that one?
Nope. Gruesome Casket called. They wanted to know when the next podcast was
out. Oh man! So we're glad that you came back. He's getting freezy again. You're getting jittery there, Tom.
Yep.
Well, welcome back.
Probably my computer.
The Crossing Gate podcast is brought to you by Dial-Up Internet.
Yes. And then make that fax
DSL?
noise.
We don't need that.
1200 baud. You guys get rid of the baud modems?
Yeah.
They make that wonderful noise when you dial up. Oh. Sounds like a fax machine. Oh, man. So, but yeah, I'm a little distracted, guys. I'm trying to find comments in our chat to highlight. Because I think people are saying a lot of very worthwhile things here.
Sure.
And it really echoes a lot of what we've been talking about. So anyway, I do want to mention to the viewers, though, if you have any questions, specific to someone on the panel, I'm going to call it a panel here, put it in the chat here, and I'll try to pick them out and highlight them. It's just, I'm talking and reading at the same time, which is never that problem I have with my memory. It has to do with multitasking too.
Been there.
There's a few people in chat who should be on our podcasts. And I think they're like, "Oh no, I'm not good enough." It's like, no, come talk. We'll have you talk about what you know.
Sure. We have space on my StreamYard thing for like 10, but the question is then how do you decide who talks?
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I was
not come on here, but I'm saying like interviewed by Ray or by Andy or something.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I'm going to hit on that topic real quick about what makes a great guest, and there's no correlation in my mind per se between a great modeler and a great interview. I think at times there are great modelers that may not open up or talk or share their story as well as somebody who's maybe learning the hobby. And I think there's just as much of a great story there. Not to say a great modeler can't come on and be a great guest, but I don't think there's an exact correlation between the two. And that's what I really enjoy, is finding people at all levels and seeing where they're at, and why, even if they're just getting started. We talk about Joe Mammy. Now, Joe Mammy is a great modeler, but he hasn't completed a major layout yet. I mean, he's done his shelf layouts and he's done some small ones, but hearing his story of how he's going through the process of making decisions has been so enjoyable to me. Like, what ignites his interest, and why is it that he ultimately is such an open-minded guy that it's a struggle for him to pick a layout. And I think a lot of people can learn from that. So I think, again, it doesn't necessarily have to tie. So if people are thinking, I'm not going to be a good guest, if you have a great story to tell, or something to show, or something that you've done that you're really proud of, and you can tell the story of it, you're a podcast guest. Absolutely, sure.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating too, Ray. I know people, well, actually one specific person that I know who won't share his stuff. And he is one of the most amazing modelers I have ever seen. I have brought people specifically to show them his stuff because it's so good. But I've asked him and he's like, oh, no one wants to hear me. Oh, I can't talk. It's like, you know what? This is the inspiration that there are a lot of people waiting to see, because I'm not even kidding. It is like some of the best, most detailed, amazing modeling I've ever seen in my life. Just doesn't want to do it. And, it's okay. I'm kind of the mind that if you don't want to do it, you know, I'm not going to twist anybody's arm. That's you're right not to do it. But it's a shame, because documenting this person's stuff would provide so much inspiration. And Tony, there was a question for you. I'm not sure. They're referring to something that we talked about, I think, in the very beginning.
Where I grew up, St. Louis, Missouri area, but over on the Illinois side, almost in between Springfield, Illinois, and St. Louis, Jerseyville, Illinois. It was on the GM&O, and then later the Illinois Central Gulf, and today it's the CPKC somehow goes through there.
So you would have tied the beginning of the podcast to the end of the podcast, or the show, by saying that you were from Normal, Illinois. I think that would have been the perfect time.
That would have been good.
Opportunity missed, but
I've been to Normal, Illinois, but no, that's north. Yeah, no, but very good. Yeah,
that was
bad dad humor. Yeah. So, on that point of people that don't want to share, I'll share one real quick. I was at Amherst, and there was a modeler who will remain nameless, but will be a guest here soon, so you can all guess who it is. But he stood there, and as I told him, hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. He goes, no. He goes, I couldn't do a podcast. I couldn't do that. And then proceeded to talk for 45 minutes straight, telling the story of his podcast. Everybody standing around, or of his layout, standing around.
It's the same guy, Ray.
Just give me a mic. Give me a mic, and just let's hold it right here. Just keep talking. This is what you do. And it's like, and you'd make my job easy. It's like it's the podcaster's version of putting on a Stairway to Heaven. If anybody understands, the DJ world, if you ever hear Stairway to Heaven, and Tony, you could probably name like 3 other songs.
Inagata de Vida by Iron Butterfly is like 16 minutes. Yeah, if you needed that, I need to go, restroom and get a soda and the pizza guy's here. So you put on a 10 or 12, 15-minute song. Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly what those people are. If you get a good talker on your podcast, put your feet up on the desk, kick back, and just let the song play. And exactly
it's side one of 2112 for me.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh.
So here's kind of an interesting question that's not really what we're talking about, but interesting in the sense that maybe we're inspiring people to want to do something. I don't know. When's the next time you're going to be at a convention? I think they want to know if we're all going to be at one. And I don't know if that would be kind of a tall order, since we're all in different areas, right?
Coast to coast, basically. Yeah.
But that's not to say, though, that we couldn't do one of those meetup things someplace that's not as far away as all the way out in California where I am, or all the way out in Connecticut, but somewhere in between someday.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike and I are going to be. I think tentatively we're scheduled to head out to the Rocky Mountain Train Show this coming April.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so Mike and I are gonna make the trek out there and take in all the sights and see. Apparently, this show is an up and comer, and it's growing, and it's turned into a real spectacle. So Mike and I want to be there and just walk around, see what it's all about, do some rail fanning, go to the Colorado Railroad Museum, and go from there. We'll also be at St. Louis next year, the St. Louis RPM. So Mike and I'll be in attendance there. I think we're going to meet up with Tony, get some barbecue, and hang out and talk trains.
That's always a fun weekend. Yes, the St. Louis RPM. My assistant editor, my good friend Shane Mason, and I would never miss that show. And Mike always comes down, and we rail fan at Kirkwood on Friday nights on the old Mopac line. And
I'm so jealous. I hope I get to do that this coming year.
We always have a blast. That's a fun weekend. Although they're a handful, so you'll have to help me with that because I had to sit between them at Waffle House this year, so to keep from
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
Oh jeez.
Well, I'm going to go both coasts this year. I finally told the bride I'm going to Springfield just to do it. It's, it's one of those things you have to go to. So I arranged the trip that way. And then I dangled Long Beach in front of her. I said, we haven't gone anywhere, during the showstopper. I said, we saved up our vacation. But how would you like to go to Southern California? And she's like, yes. So I will be at Long Beach for at least half the week too.
Did you tell her it's for the train convention?
Seriously,
See, it sounds different when you say, how would you like to go to sunny Southern California with the palm trees, compared to, hey, you want to go to the NMRA convention with me?
That's right.
I don't know. They could quick on that one, because I'll say that to Shane of, we'd love to see the fall colors on the narrow gauge. See if Brooke, they just got married in the last year, his wife Brooke. See if she'd like to go to Colorado, maybe see the fall colors. He said the minute I say Durango, she'll figure it out. She'll know what's going on.
So tell her you're staying in Pagosa Springs.
Yeah, there you go.
That's about equidistant to Durango and Silverton and Coomers and Toltec, so you can hit them both. See.
Oh,
good luck finding a nice place in Pagosa Springs. That's the problem. We stayed in some place. I went on this. I don't know. I guess probably some of you guys watched this. I went on this epic trip a couple of years ago. That was like 7 states, 10,000 miles. It's some crazy thing. And we stayed in Pagosa Springs for that very reason, to go to both Durango and Silverton and Coomers and Toltec. And there was this place, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was actually, you could tell it was a really nice place at one time, but it was just showing its age, and it hadn't really been kept up that well. And that appears on one of the Chasing Trains videos, or maybe 2 of the Chasing Trains videos from the epic trip of 2021, I think it was.
I love those shows.
Anyway,
Back of my tour short says that I'll be at the New England Model Train Expo, which is the Hub Division show on December 2nd and 3rd. That's up in Marlborough, Massachusetts. And then that's kind of like the warm-up for the big one, the Railroad Hobby Show that Tom was mentioning in West Springfield. I'll have a table at that show. I believe that's January 28th, 29th, but I could have the dates off by a day or two. But it's that last weekend in January. And then I do also plan on being at the St. Louis RPM to come out there. And Tony, that Lincoln is filling up. You better make sure you got everything out of the back, because we're all going to pile in. And we're going to be cruising with Tony down through the streets of St. Louis. So now it's going to be a good time and be able to get out and see folks. That seems to be the premier RPM in the country. And the chance to hang out with Tony and eat barbecue is just enough to get me over the edge to get a plane ticket and get out there. So
that's a great RPM. It's a really fun show. Yeah.
Isn't that the only one that's full 2 days?
It's Friday, all day Friday, and there's a presentation Friday night, and then Saturday it's through the day, and it usually wraps up at about 4, and they do prize giveaways. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Tons of manufacturers. Always a good. And the presentations are awesome. The one Mike Brusky from Class 1 did a thing on those depressed center flat cars that I thought was really good. I've done some before. I can't remember what I did one on. I did one on something. I might have done one on U-boats or something at one time or another. But the presentations, I think, are as much fun as what's going on at the actual RPM meet, too, that the guys do all the PowerPoint stuff and lots of information there.
Lots of sharing. Lots of sharing of information.
Isn't that the great thing about RPMs? I love those. We have one out here that's only one day, once a year, June, whatever the weekend of Father's Day every year. And it's a great meet. I haven't been to it since before COVID, but it's just great. I mean, you can see what people have done, and they're most often on hand. They do some clinics. It's just like a miniature version of the St. Louis one, I guess. So for people who can't get out there. But they are a lot of fun, and it's always good to see what someone has done. And like we were saying earlier, 99.9% of the time, they'll tell you exactly how they did it, so you can try it yourself. It's a great way to learn techniques and learn things to try out at home. You know, they won't all work for everybody, but if you have a place to start, I think it's a good way to go. Anyway, so I'm not getting a lot more questions on here. Should we go around the table one more time for closing statements? And it sounds like a presidential debate or something.
Closing arguments.
Vote for Tony.
This has been a trial. That's for sure.
Promise cheap gas and free donuts for everybody.
Yeah.
If you vote for me.
There you go. Well, John, thank you for having me on the show. And it's again, it's been this hour and 40 some minutes is just flown by. And I think that's one of the things that I absolutely love about being part of this community on YouTube and in the podcast is that, you get together with a bunch of like-minded people, and it's so easy to get swept up and just having fun. And I think it really, really brings an added level of enjoyment to my hobby, being able to share with others, but then also being able to be part of this community and talking. And, now that, there's no awkwardness, right? So like if we were to meet, face to face, that whole, first date jitters is out of the way. And, we just talk and hang out like we're lifelong friends. And that's the aspect that I truly love and being able to inspire. So thank you again, John, for having me on the show. I'm glad I could share with this crew tonight. It's been fun. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And then happy birthday again, John. Thanks for that.
It's the second time I've missed that. Happy birthday, John.
Yeah, rub it in, Daddy. But
don't let me forget, Tom.
I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm a video guy. I want to see how to do it. But I like the audio podcast because you can listen to us in your car. You can listen to us on your walks. I go for a walk almost every day. I'm like, okay, what's the newest one from Ray? What's the newest one? You can put it on while you're, Tom Barberley and put it on while you're working around the layout. And you don't have to, take your interest away to go see how they're gluing on the latest thing. But yeah, and around the layout, you listen to all these guys that you can do it while you're at the workbench. And that's where I really, really enjoy the podcasts, and I really find the information. So I know we are in a video centric world with the other social medias hitting hard, but check out an audio podcast. Just put it in there, put us in the earbuds, and if you want, put it on 2 times speed. It might be more enjoyable. So, but thank you again, John, for this opportunity.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure spending your birthday, John, with my good friends here in the room, and being able to talk to your audience about all of our podcasts. And it's just, I think Tom and Andy, they've hit a lot of great points. Whether you're listening to audio podcasts or you're watching a video podcast, thank you. Thank you for being a part of our community and sharing that. And and I hope you invite other people as well. If you like a show and you think it could be useful for somebody else, please help spread the word. Share it with somebody else and keep the word going. That's what we're here for. We're just here to entertain you and give you some information and pass along the time while you're working on your models or driving in your car or apparently taking a shower. That's something I've learned tonight. So wherever the audience is, we're happy to be there, and I think it's absolutely fantastic to be able to share our stories. So thanks, John, for having us. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And also, Tony, thank you for being the guest co-host. We have a little more business to take care of, but I think I'll send the rest of you guys on your way if you're okay with that. And thank you very much for coming. You are welcome back anytime. We all know, we all have each other's contact information. So hopefully you'll be around when Tony and I wrap up here, and we'll talk in a few minutes. So thank you very much.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys.
Good night.
All right, Tony, that leaves us. We have something else to talk about just for a minute here, and that is December's Talking Trains show.
I mean, what else at this time of year do you think of besides, the Christmas tree and the good food and getting together with family, but train sets? And we talked about this recently, and you had invited me to come back in December and talk about train sets. And I said, let's ask the folks, your followers on Facebook, that kind of thing, to let us know, because I get those a lot, especially the HO collector fans that tell me what their first train set was. That was their start in the hobby, whether it's this company, that company, N scale, O scale, HO, that train sets are such an important thing. I thought it would be fun to take a look at a handful of kind of landmark train sets, talk a little bit about the companies and about the train sets, and then have people share too comments on what their first train set was, why it was important to them, what was neat about it. And I guess we're going to do that, in about a month?
Yeah, I believe the date is December 20th. Let me check my calendar. I am probably the only one who uses a printed calendar for this stuff, but I just find it's a lot easier to look at stuff. I was right, December 20th. So December 20th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, I'm going to have Tony back on to talk about that stuff. So in the comment section of this video, and I may put a poll or something like that out on the Fans of Talking Trains Facebook page. If you're not aware of it, there is a page on Facebook called Fans of Talking Trains where we share projects and, talk and discuss stuff and all kinds of, sharing events, whatever. And maybe I'll put a post on there too, Tony. And the idea, of course, is to get questions or comments about specific train sets or, what inspired you to start in the hobby, and have Tony, because, I don't know, Tony, if people realize this, and I only learned recently really how much of a fountain of knowledge you are about the classic trains. So, I mean, obviously you must know something about it because of the publications that you edit, right? But I don't know. I mean, who am I to ask? I don't know. I'm not really shy about asking people to come on, but it's just good to know that now. And I think we'll have a great time. I'm still trying to determine whether to have you on as the guest co-host and just have a discussion, or to have another co-host and make you the featured guest. I'll figure that out between now and then. So, and
I'll have images for us to share that night, some classic catalog pages, that kind of stuff where you get to see the things. So it'll be a fun night of nostalgic page turning through old catalogs and, old information on model trains.
Back then, I used to memorize the page number of the catalog where the train started. So it'll be a great trip down memory lane, I'm sure. For me, I'll probably see stuff and go, oh, I remember that. That was right next to the one I got.
Very fun. Yeah, should be a lot of fun. A great topic.
Yeah. So thanks for agreeing to do that too. I think we'll have a lot of fun.
And I appreciate you having me on this evening. And as I mentioned early on the show, I've got an offer in honor of John's birthday that if you go to shop.whiteriverproductions.com, you can get an extra discount on a year subscription to Model Railroad News. And that code to put in is TSG10. And that's in like a coupon code as you check out. And that'll get an additional discount on Model Railroad News. So I appreciate being part of the show tonight, John. A lot of fun.
Thank you, sir. And what I'll do for the viewers is I'll go back and watch this, and I will type that entire link out into our video description, so it's easy to find and easy to click on. And since we're talking about links, just real quick, I want to mention I already have put in the links of our guest podcasters that we're talking for the past hour and 40 minutes before now. So if you're interested in checking out any of their podcasts, they're all worth listening to. I've listened to all of them at some point and enjoyed all of them. So be sure to check them out too. And one last thing I want to mention before we go. This Saturday, I have kind of an unusual program coming on. Normally, I'll do the product spotlights on Fridays, but I had a very unusual one that's going to come out on Saturday. So tune in for that at 9 a.m. Saturday morning Pacific time, and you'll see what I mean when it comes on. It's just a very unusual piece. So,
very neat.
Yeah, you'll probably enjoy that one too, Tony. It's that model I was telling
we were talking about.
earlier.
Oh, wow, cool. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, see, but we're going to keep the viewers in suspense. All right, thanks everybody. Thank you so much, Tony. And I guess we'll catch everybody next month as soon as I figure out where my ending music is. Here it is. I found it. Shall we go now?
Thanks a lot, John. Great evening.
Thank you.